I think we get different pictures, different glimpses of God's character and who He is for us. Now, I was at a very fun but a very disappointing event just a few months ago. It was the one playoff game the Twins got to host, right, against the mighty Yankees. And it was a really great time, but the game ended with the Yankees jumping around on our field. And once again, we lost to the Yankees. But there's this thing that we do in sports. We hang these banners, right? When we win something. It's been a little while since we won this NFC North Championship, and I guess one in 2017 too. But we hang these banners here. Here's some of our championship banners for the Vikings, and this next slide would be our championship banners for the Minnesota Wild. And the next slide here would be a championship banners for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So maybe we don't get to hang a lot of championship banners here in Minnesota. Thank God we have the Lynx. But we also have the Twins, and they've got these flags, these banners that are flying. And so even when you're looking down at the field, watching another season come to a heartbreaking end, you look up and there is hope, right? There's these two red banners that are flying from 1987 and 1991, which is kind of a long time ago. But there was a day when we beat the Yankees and everybody else. And one day we will be able to do it again. So banners give us hope. They remind us of these past victories, and they give us hope that it could happen again. Well, today we're looking at Exodus chapter 17, and in it is a name of God, and it's this name Yahweh Nissi in Hebrew. It's a name that Moses seems to give to God, and literally it means Yahweh, which is the name of God, the most intimate name of God, Yahweh, our banner. And if you want, you can look at Exodus chapter 17 here, just a short story. God's people are in the wilderness. They get attacked by the Amalekites, another ethnic group that comes against them, and there's this battle, and Moses tells his general, Joshua, to go out and engage the enemy that's coming towards them. And he and two of his friends, his brother, and then so Aaron and Hur are their names. They come up with him, and Moses says, I'm going to raise my hands and the rod of the Lord on a cliff overlooking this battle. And Moses finds that when he puts his arms up, the people of Israel are winning the battle. But his arms get tired. If you've ever even just held your arms up for a little bit, you can't do it for too long, right, before you start to get tired. So when he would put his arms down to rest, the tide of the battle would turn, and the Amalekites would begin to look like they were winning. So he would put his arms back up, and he got tired, so these two men helped put a rock under him, and then they literally stood there and held his arms up so that the victory would be won. John Philip Millay is an artist from the 1800s. In 1871, he painted this picture, just an idea of what that scene might have looked like as Moses has his arms raised. And it's hard to see here in this light here, but right here is actually an arrow lodged in the rock right next to Moses. Isn't that interesting to think that Moses is not just doing this for the people that are below him, but he's holding up his arms for his own safety as well, for he will be destroyed unless God acts. But God does act, and the people of God win the battle that day, and Moses goes back, and at the very end of Exodus 17, we find him proclaiming, God is our banner. This is a name, Yahweh Nissi, God is our banner. For it is through him that we have won the victory. And this Hebrew word Nissi can mean banner. It can also mean victory. It's a reminder of the victory of God. And then Moses says something really interesting in the last verse. He says, there will always be fights. There will always be war with the Amalekites. And if you keep going through the Old Testament, you see that over and over. These two ethnic groups continue to clash. And the Amalekites will raid the Israelites. And yet, they are never able to overcome. They are never able to push out the Israelites. God's victory is always there for them. And God as banner is a reminder to the people of Israel that God will fight for them and God will win the victory. I think that's a really powerful message for us. And just as it was for the people of Israel, David, the psalmist, gives word to this in Psalm 20. He says this, "May we shout for joy over your victory," speaking to God, "and lift up our banners in the name of our God." Let's remind ourselves of the victory of God, is what David's saying here. May the Lord grant all your requests. Now this I know, the Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers him from his heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. David connects this idea of banner and remembering the victory of God. And this becomes a powerful message for us too as we sit in this season of Advent. It's in this season that we remember that, yes, Christ has come, but we also remember and we anticipate that Christ is coming again. In this season, we remember that victory came into the world as that little baby was born, and what Christ did as he showed the power that he had over evil by touching people and healing them, restoring sight and speech and hearing, the ability to walk, as he raised people from the dead, as he showed he had power over creation, just speaking to the winds and the waves and they would be stilled, and even showing his power over death itself, as he raised a widow's son, as he spoke into Lazarus' grave to come out, and as he himself was raised after his crucifixion, never to die again, showing that he had the victory over death itself. And so as we sit in this season, we remember that victory has come, but we also can really poignantly feel that victory is not totally won yet, right? I just started this new job as a hospital chaplain, and I really love the hospital setting because you never know what's going to happen in the next moment. And Friday morning, get a page and go in, and there's an elderly gentleman in cardiac arrest, and you walk the family down to the next place that they're going to go, and then later in the day, walking them up to the ICU, and to hear them be told, your husband, your father, your grandfather probably has minutes left to live here, and they just wanted him home for Christmas, right? Can you just come home for Christmas, Grandpa? And we were there together as he passed away, and you just feel in that moment like victory is not here yet. But as God's people, as people of Advent, we are people that proclaim that victory is coming. We are people that point back to the victory that has already been won. We proclaim the banner of God and say, victory has been ours and victory will be ours perfectly one day. And we proclaim that hope, and that is a hope that the world needs to hear. Christ has come, but he is coming again, and he's going to put everything back the way it should be. All the sad things will come untrue. Children's Storybook Bible puts it that way, and I love that. So we look back and we remember what Christ has done. We raise the banner of victory, and we proclaim that one day that victory is coming perfectly and totally and wholly. That victory was proclaimed in prophecy about Christ coming into the world. And I love how Hebrew poetry does this. In Isaiah chapter 9, these are familiar words, but it speaks in the present tense, right? And Hebrew poetry has a way of doing this if it's sure about something that's going to happen. And so Christ doesn't even come for hundreds of years after this prophecy, but it says the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. Like, it's happened. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And Isaiah is writing this during a dark time in the history of the people of Israel. But he's saying, hey, this is going to happen. I'm going to write it in the present tense because God's going to do this. And at the end of this passage, he says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. It's going to happen, people. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom. And then I love how Isaiah ends this passage, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. It's going to happen forever. And the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. It's going to happen, people. Our God is a God of victory. Let's raise the banner and remind ourselves of the goodness of God and the power of God and the victories he has won and the victory that will be ours perfectly one day. Art critics have looked at that piece by Millet of Moses holding up his arms, and they see a lot of connections to some other pieces of art. In fact, there was a contemporary Millet who was painting a picture at the same time, and some wonder if they even had looked at each other's paintings. And there's a picture of Christ that this other artist did where he has his arms at the exact same angle as Moses. That's a reminder of Christ crucified on the cross. And so just as Moses held out his arms so that the victory might be won, we remember that Christ was raised up almost as a banner with his arms raised on the cross. And because of his death and because of his resurrection, we look up at that and we remember that victory will be ours one day. And the Apostle Paul puts it so poetically, so beautifully when he writes in 1 Corinthians 15, when the perishable has been clothed with imperishable, the mortal with immortality, then the saying that is written will come true. And what is that saying? Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God. He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Christ has been raised up as a banner. For God has won the victory through Christ's death and resurrection. And when Christ returns, the victory will be completed perfectly. And so we hold up that banner for the world, pointing people to Christ on the cross. And Christ, who is no longer on the cross, but ruling over death in glory. I hope next time you go to Target Field, you'll look up and you'll feel some hope. But I also hope that you'll look up and remember that we too have a banner. And that banner is Christ himself. He has won the victory for us. And he is coming back to make that victory perfect one day. That's the story we can proclaim this Advent season, this season of waiting, which, if we're honest, is a season we constantly live in as humans. And so may we constantly raise the banner of Christ and say, victory is coming. Victory is here, and it's coming perfectly. This morning to end, I just want to give you a gift. In this season where we are running and running and running and doing and doing and doing and finishing and finishing and finishing, I just want to allow you to sit this morning and be still and be quiet. And I just want you to listen to some words that I've been listening to this week. Just listening to the old standard, O come, Emmanuel. I've realized this week in a new way what a dark song it is. Yeah, it's in a minor key, but some of the words are just dark. It gives this imagery of a really hard time. Death's dark shadows to flight, right? Like they're right there. You get the feeling when you hear these words. I think it's a great reminder of this where we are. We know victory is ours, but we feel the hurt and the pain of death and sin and the devil. And yet, the chorus of the song is what? Rejoice. Right? Yeah. Victory is ours and victory is coming. And so this morning, let's just listen to these words and sit and think about the banner that we raise in victory. God, we just want to say thank you for Emmanuel. Thank you that you have come to be a with us kind of God. You have come to give us the victory. And God, you are sending your Son back one day. That victory will be complete. God, I pray that as we have opportunity with the people we move with each day, that we would point them to the banner that is Christ on the cross, and Christ no longer on the cross. God, I pray that during this in-between time, that we would feel your hope, that we would find your peace, that we would walk in your joy, even as we await that day of perfect victory. Pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.